With the impeachment inquiry gearing up to go public, President Trump traveled to New York City for the Veterans Day parade. The windows of one building nearby spelled out the words impeach and convict, and many veterans boycotted the parade entirely. One of them explained why.
I don't want to be politicized, and I think many veterans are staying away from this parade because they feel like it's being unnecessarily politicized. Everywhere Trump goes has become a divisive and partisan event, and that's true today. No matter how much they stage it, there are some veterans who are staying home today because he's there. There are some veterans who are off-site protesting, and what is normally a day of tremendous unity and patriotism and cohesion has now been just really swathed in politics.
NBC's Hans Nichols is outside Trump Tower in New York City. And Hans, how's the White House preparing for this critical week ahead?
Well, the president is going to be here for the next 2 days. Then on Wednesday, he's hosting the president of Turkey. And you will have this remarkable split screen. And that is when on Wednesday, when you have the beginning of the impeachment inquiries, the president will be doing a press conference with the president of Turkey. Now, beforehand, over the weekend, you heard the president starting to take aim at some of the potential witnesses, namely Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted ambassador to the Ukraine. And it's the first time the president has really personally and individually attacked one of the potential witnesses, suggesting that she was untrustworthy. He essentially, by retweeting, called her a liar. That marked a new phase from the president because up to this point, he's basically been saying that all these witnesses are either never Trumpers or basically people he didn't have much contact, much interaction with. So he appears to be willing to go after them more personally and a little bit more targeted. And in general, you hear this from the House side as well, is that they're going to have serious questions about the process. And they're claiming this process is unfair and that the president should have the right to face his accusers, which Adam Schiff has said clearly will not happen. Allison?
Hans, you mentioned the president's holding a news conference with the Turkish president on Wednesday, the same day the public hearings kick off. Is that a coincidence?
Well, that November 13th had been the date that the president had invited the president of Turkey up to maybe 3-4 weeks ago is when the White House initially put that out. I think the president himself put it out on Twitter. So if there's a coincidence, it's on the House's side because the House then decided to start their public hearings on that same date. But the White House had indicated for quite some time that it would be November 13th. And remember, even when we put sanctions, when the U.S. put sanctions on Turkey, that date stood, and then the sanctions have been removed. There's some question about whether Erdogan would himself come, and he indicated in local press that he might not, but it does appear that November 13th is the date that Erdogan is scheduled to come to Washington, and that has been set for several weeks now.
Hans, the president said he'll release the transcript of another call with the Ukrainian president tomorrow. That call happened, though, before the July conversation at the center of this impeachment inquiry. What's he doing here?
Well, the president clearly wants to get his side of the story out. And so this is the April 21st call, the initial call that he had with President Zelensky, congratulating him on his victory. Now, last week, the president hinted that he might do this. Then he was a little bit more definitive before heading off to that football game on Friday, even giving us the date, setting the clock, initially saying it would be Monday, and then saying it would be Tuesday. The White House basically thinks that it's exculpatory and that this is a part of the story that they want to tell. And again, the president wants to have this entire impeachment discussion to be on the four corners of what is in those transcripts or call logs, however you want to refer to them. He wants the debate to center on that because he thinks he's done nothing wrong and it's entirely defensible. So I think we're the beginning of a process discussion in addition to some of the substance. Allison?
Hans, I'd love to ask you about Nikki Haley for a moment. In her forthcoming book, the former ambassador to the United Nations claims she was recruited by two of the president's top advisors to undermine him. The Washington Post quotes her as saying, Kelly and Tillerson confided in me that when they resisted the president, they weren't being insubordinate. They were trying to save the country. Tell us about this and how the White House is responding to all of it.
Well, the White House is basically disputing that any of these conversations ever took place. They're not necessarily casting doubt on what Nikki Haley is saying. They're basically siding with her, but they're not explicitly acknowledging that two of the president's former senior advisors were in any way disloyal. So I think in general, Nikki Haley, you get someone who's positioned herself very closely to the president. She has criticized him on occasion, right? Every so often she comes close to really laying it down with the president, but for the most part, she has stayed loyal to the president. And remember, she did 2 years as the U.S. ambassador to the UN and then moved back to South Carolina. And there's a lot of speculation that she has political plans potentially in her future. Allison?
Hans Nichols, great to have you here in New York. We'll catch up with you later in the week.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.